There are instances when you find yourself observing your own existence from a distance, akin to witnessing a meticulously staged performance, where each dialogue is anticipated and every movement feels known. With a practiced grin, you respond with a knowing nod, serving the wine just as the moment calls for it. The evening unfolds like a well-rehearsed play, each line of dialogue anticipated, and the responses of your husband echoing in your mind before he even speaks. It was one of those nights filled with whispers and echoes of the past. The aroma of roasted chicken mingled with the fragrant notes of rosemary, filling the house with a warm and inviting essence. The table was arranged just as he preferred. Sleek designs, simplicity reigns, 2 white candles danced gently between the plates, infusing a touch of warmth into the otherwise stark symmetry. I donned a soft, beige dress that gracefully draped just below my knees. The type of attire that quietly enhances one's silhouette without demanding the spotlight. My husband has always valued that harmony, refined elegance, and a touch of restraint. His father had come to share some moments together. This isn't the first time, naturally. He had woven himself into the fabric of these family dinners for as long as I could recall, consistently showing up with a courteous grin, a bottle of wine cradled in his arm, and a strong handshake that spoke volumes. Yet there was an unmistakable quality to his entrance that evening that seemed unusual. Or perhaps it was I who had transformed. Perhaps I started to observe details that had previously slipped my mind. He admired the beauty of my dress, not in the haphazard manner in which some individuals toss around words without consideration. He observed, his eyes traveled slowly, with intention, from the hemline back up to my face, lingering on my gaze. Just a heartbeat longer than needed, just the right amount of time for the warmth to bloom across my cheeks. I chuckled and brushed it aside. Naturally, a gentle, familiar chuckle, the type of chuckle I had mastered over time, a way to brush aside something while still holding onto it in a subtle manner. The evening unfolded just as anticipated. My husband shared tales of his work, weaving in details about the latest projects and the neighbors who are considering selling their house. His father absorbed the words, added his thoughts occasionally, and posed courteous inquiries. I topped off. Their drinks beamed with warmth, embraced my part. Yet, the reality is, my attention was elsewhere. I found myself observing the gentle repose of his father's hands on the table, the graceful dance of his fingers as he spoke, exuding a sense of calm and certainty. Observing the subtle way his gaze flickered in my direction when my husband was momentarily distracted. There exists a yearning that arises not from lack, but from the dullness of routine. When everything is arranged just so, you start to yearn for that tiny imperfection, the subtle break that allows a breath of fresh air to seep through. My marriage was intact. It was a harmonious blend, a cozy haven, a perfectly functioning entity. Yet, it's the human touch that truly ignites passion. Devices lack the warmth that ignites a thrill at the mere idea of connection. Once we finished our meal, my husband stepped out to handle a work call. I lingered, collecting the plates and arranging them thoughtfully by the sink. His father rose to his feet, ready to lend a hand. I shared with him that it wasn't needed. He chose to remain regardless. In the quiet moments we shared, the unspoken words resonated the most. The gentle sound of delicate dishes meeting each other, accompanied by the quiet swish of cloth as we navigated the cozy confines of the kitchen. Our fingers danced together, grazing each other as we both reached for the same plate. On 2 occasions, I feigned ignorance. "You always handle everything," he murmured softly, as if sharing a secret with the air around him. As I looked up, our gazes locked in a moment of connection. This time, the expression was absent of joy, replaced instead by a focused and intentional stare. "It's what everyone anticipates." I responded, my tone gentler than I meant it to be. In that fleeting instant, we remained perfectly still. The atmosphere surrounding us was thick, electric, with unspoken words. The soft sound of my husband's voice drifted in from outside, discussing shipments and deadlines, completely unaware of the world around him. The warmth surged beneath my skin, a longing I had kept buried for far too long. I turned my gaze and my hands moving to the final dishes, immersing myself in this straightforward chore to ground my thoughts. Yet, in that moment, I sensed his gaze upon me, observing, anticipating. I convinced myself it was trivial, that it would fade away, that I was just conjuring it up in my mind as I switched off the kitchen light that night and nestled into bed beside my husband, who was already lost in slumber. An unsettling sensation lingered, an impression of a watchful gaze trailing me into the shadows. And within the depths of my being, I was aware the tale was far from finished. The days that followed settled into the familiar cadence of everyday life, just as they always had. The morning ritual begins with the familiar white mug cradled in hand, emails dispatched with ease, laundry neatly folded, as the home settles back into its serene and comforting routine. My husband was occupied, as he often is. Gatherings, conversations, timelines. Even during dinner, he would steal glances at his phone, between bites nodding absent-mindedly to my inquiries, repeating the same well-worn phrases about how much he valued my support and reliability. I had come to understand the importance of keeping my expectations in check, yet understanding and experiencing are worlds apart. A smile spread across my face. I absorbed every word. I fulfilled my role. On a Thursday afternoon, my husband suggested we visit his father's house. A simple request seemed to turn quite ordinary. Return a package of medicine he had overlooked at the pharmacy. My husband found himself caught up in a late meeting. I could take care of it more smoothly, more straightforward. What a twist of fate for a plea that would complicate everything significantly. I took the plunge without a second thought. Absolutely, I would be there. What reason would I have not to? I lingered in my preparations even as I insisted I was hurrying. I selected black trousers that embraced my hips, perfectly paired with a soft cream blouse that buttoned neatly at the top, subtly revealing the curve of my collarbone. Not a lot, just enough to feel acknowledged. Softly woven, a delicate blush. Lace lies beneath, clear and straightforward, captivating. Not meant for him. For me, there are tales waiting to be shared. That was the mantra echoing in my mind as I gently caressed the fabric along my sides. The journey was brief. I played out the dialogue in my mind, laid back, respectful. Don't hang around. Simply pass him the package, share a brief conversation, and then depart simple. He opened the door with that familiar calm smile, while standing there in a dark grey sweater that hugged his chest, just right. Sleeves rolled up to showcase his strong forearms. His hair had a slight disarray, as if he'd playfully raked his fingers through it several times throughout the day. He expressed his gratitude, accepted the package from my hands, and motioned for me to step inside for just a moment. He would brew a pot of coffee. I ought to have declined. I intended to express a negative response, yet I chose to enter. The house exuded warmth and life, filled with a subtle aroma of cedar and aftershave that lingered in the air, a familiar presence that accompanied him wherever he roamed. Perched on the edge of the couch, I crossed my legs and folded my hands in my lap, finding strength in my posture to keep myself composed. He glided through the kitchen with a sense of ease, as if this were just another chapter in a familiar tale. We shared tales of everyday moments. Let me share with you the tale of my husband's bustling days and the enchanting progress of our garden. His voice flowed softly, steady and inviting. Yet there were instances, brief interludes between phrases, where his gaze lingered on me just a heartbeat longer than needed. Subtle, yet deeply sensed. I found my voice becoming gentler, my body instinctively tilting toward him, as if drawn by an unseen force. A chuckle that came too swiftly, a grin that lingered just a moment too much. As he placed the coffee down, he chose to sit across from me rather than beside me. A wise decision, practical, yet the distance that separated us seemed insufficient. "You seem weary," he remarked softly, his gaze examining me closely. "It's been quite a week," I said, my fingers dancing along the edge of the coffee cup. "You're doing quite a lot," he remarked. "You've always had a way with words." The words took me by surprise, not due to their rarity, but because they resonated with sincerity, as if he truly perceived my presence. That wasn't the part I took on. This wasn't the version my husband had come to know. However, I am here. I took a deep breath, my gaze dropping, sensing the warmth creeping back under my skin. As I finally raised my gaze, I found his eyes still fixed on mine. In that moment, a hush fell over the surroundings. Not the kind that makes you feel uncomfortable, the kind that envelops a space like a gentle mist, both tender and weighty, poised for a moment of the disruption. I rose, driven more by the urge to break free from the heaviness of that instant than by any real need I should take my leave. I murmured my tone, barely above a whisper. He rose as well, stepping nearer, not hurried, not forceful, just confident. The distance that once separated us vanished in an instant, leaving no room for retreat. His hand extended softly, landing on my wrist, a gentle caress, yet it surged through me like a current, igniting every nerve in my body. My breath hitched in my throat. "You don't need to," he murmured. Gently, I ought to have stepped back. I ought to have taken a moment to reflect. I could have brushed it aside, taken the easy route, acted as if it held no significance. However, I chose not to. I remained still, my heart racing with such intensity that I felt certain he could sense it. His gaze locked onto mine, unwavering and resolute. As he leaned in, it was a gradual, intentional movement, allowing me ample opportunity to pull away. I chose not to. Our lips met in a kiss that began gently, filled with uncertainty, as if seeking permission. But then a shift occurred within me, a tale of tension where a thread stretched beyond its limits ultimately finds its release. I leaned into him, pressing closer, my fingers intertwining with the fabric of his sweater, as if I could capture that moment and prevent it from fading into the past. It was never meant to unfold this way, not present. "This isn't the way," as his hand found its way to the small of my back, drawing me nearer, and his lips pressed more insistently against mine. A rush of sensations enveloped me, my body reacting instinctively before my thoughts could fully comprehend the moment. My skin ignited with the fire at his touch. My heart danced in rhythm with his. A silent exchange of breaths. His breath enveloped me warm and eager, in perfect harmony with mine. And then it came to a halt. I drew back, initially gasping for air. My eyes filled with wonder. The heaviness of our recent actions lingered in the air, a solid presence that could not be ignored. I ought not to have. Once upon a time, I took the first step, yet the words seemed to lack significance. He chose silence. He offered no words of regret. He remained still, observing me intently. his chest heaving with each breath, his hands tightly balled into fists at his sides. I averted my gaze, clutching my bag tightly, struggling with the strap, as if that simple action could magically restore everything to how it once was. It seems it's time for me to take my leave. I spoke again, my voice just a soft murmur. This time he granted me the opportunity. As I stepped outside, I descended the front steps and slid into the driver's seat of my car. My hands shook as I held the steering wheel, my heart-pounding lips still buzzing from the sensation of his kiss. I lingered in that moment, gazing through the windshield as the heaviness of the past enveloped me. Each breath a struggle against the tide of memories. Yet the most challenging aspect wasn't the remorse. It wasn't the dread of what lay ahead. The most challenging aspect was the realization that my desires extended beyond what I had. In the following days, I found myself enveloped in the comforting embrace of familiarity. With a fervent focus, meticulously folding laundry, polishing countertops that were already spotless, and mindlessly scrolling through emails, each action a part of an unspoken narrative. I kept myself occupied. Busy can be quite beneficial. Staying engaged helps to steady your hands and calm your nerves. Activity drowns out the quiet, preventing you from confronting your own reflections. And yet, in every hushed instant, my thoughts wandered back to that kiss. The warmth of his hands resting on my waist, the intensity of his gaze anchoring me. Even after I had turned to leave, it lingered in my mind, not in the manner that remorse lingers, but in the way longing captivates, coming back, time after time insisting on being experienced. I found myself anticipating his evasion, to reach out and extend a sincere apology, to simplify the process of imagining it never occurred. Yet, the words of remorse were never uttered. At the next family dinner, he made his presence known, gathered around the familiar table, sharing the salad bowl with a serene smile. I engaged my husband in a courteous dialogue about the latest market trends, as if the moments we shared had vanished into thin air. It felt as if we were all precisely in the same place we had always known. Yet he was aware, and even more troubling, I was aware that he was aware. That evening, I donned a navy blue dress, its modest cut gently caressing my skin, the fabric embracing my waist, before cascading gracefully at the hips below a delicate layer of pale silk. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful shade known as ivory. It glided over me, whispering of hidden truths I was never meant to hold. I reassured myself that it was merely the first item I had pulled from the closet. I deceived myself with such ease. As we shared our meal, I could sense his gaze lingering on me. Not all the time, insufficient to captivate anyone's interest, yet frequently enough that I could feel a tingling sensation on my skin from its heaviness. He never gazed. I just experienced something captivating, nuanced calm, and composed. I found myself leaning in as laughter bubbled up gently, tucking a stray lock of hair behind my ear, revealing the delicate arch of my neck in the process. It wasn't intentional, I reassured myself. And yet, following the meal, my husband stepped away to take a call, a gathering that demanded immediate attention. The same familiar tale. With a gentle touch, I gathered the plates, arranging them neatly in the kitchen sink, a familiar ritual that felt like a part of me. Before his voice reached my ears, I sensed his presence shifting behind me. He remarked that you consistently go above and beyond what others see. Softly spoken, not gentle, simply calm. I chose not to look back. My fingers clutched the rim of the sink, turning pale with tension. When I discovered my voice, it was delicate and cautious. It's simply the way things must unfold. is that the narrative you create for yourself. His tone lacked malice. It was more challenging than ever. Truthful. I shut my eyes, hoping the warmth in my heart would calm down. The soft murmur of my husband's voice drifted from the next room just out of reach, leaving me curious about the tales he might be weaving. Just near enough to evoke the memory of my exact position. I began, but his hand gently settled on my shoulder, halting the words before they could take form. He spoke softly. I'm not asking for anything. I can only perceive you. That was the most challenging moment, not the embrace, not the adventure. Yet, he was sharing the truth, that he noticed me. I turned slowly, maintaining the distance between us, grasping that final thread of defiance as if it still had the power to endure. Our gazes intertwined, calm and composed, on a quest. Anticipating, I pondered whether he could perceive the battles unfolding within my gaze, the longing to remain, the urge to escape. I chose to stay still. Yet, I found myself standing still, not approaching him at all, not at this moment. I pulled myself back into the flow of the night, tidying up the dishes, giving him nothing more than a brief nod before I slipped away, making my way upstairs to our bedroom. As my husband concluded his call, his voice echoed softly down the hallway, a testament to the intricate dance of negotiation that had momentarily pulled him from our shared space. As I stood before the dresser, my fingers glided through my hair, each stroke. A familiar rhythm, almost like a tale being woven in the quiet of the morning. As I gazed into the mirror, a familiar figure met my eyes. Glimmers of light in the gaze, crimson hues dance upon the lips. I appeared as if I were a woman standing at the crossroads of two distinct selves. The one she had always been, a character woven into the fabric of countless tales, and the person she was transforming into. That night, as my husband settled into bed next to me, his arm resting lightly across my waist, I felt a tension coursing through me, rigid beneath the gentle pressure. His fingers danced in lazy patterns along my hip. Known, missing. I shut my eyes, hoping my body would react as it once did, as it was meant to be. Yet each touch seemed to come from far away, uninspiring. I recalled the hands that had held my waist just 2 days prior, the lips that had discovered my own, yearning and resolute. The gaze that had stripped me bare, long before I had ever shed my clothes. The following morning the pain lingered on. I reminded myself once more that it had been an error. I decided to maintain my distance, steering clear of any opportunities for something deeper to unfold. But when the phone buzzed that afternoon, and his name lit up the screen, a wave of anticipation surged through me. It was a straightforward message. Forgive me if I overstepped. Yet, I hold no regrets. There's no need for an apology. There are no justifications. Simply that I chose to remain silent. I glanced at the message a single time, 2 times, 10 times in that moment. I made the choice to erase it. Yet the word lingered. As each hour slipped away, so too did the yearning, everlasting, unfolding. The invitation caught me by surprise. It arrived effortlessly, woven into a dialogue about plans and familial duties, so subtly inserted that it could have appeared harmless to an outsider. We're considering a little weekend getaway to the lake house. One evening, as we sat together at the dinner table, my husband shared a thought. It was Dad's idea. It was mentioned that it's been quite a while since we all ventured out there together. I nodded, savoring each bite, maintaining a calm demeanor. Once upon a time, there was a lake house. I was familiar with the location. A tranquil retreat, nestled 2 hours from the bustling city, embraced by towering pines, a wraparound porch, adorned with aged wooden railings, polished by the passage of time and the elements, a sanctuary crafted for unwinding elegance in its purest form. Stepping away from the clamor of daily life, a setting where whispers traveled easily, and space was a precious commodity, the following days unfolded in a whirlwind of readiness, gathering essentials, crafting menus, orchestrating arrangements. My husband, as expected, was completely engrossed in his work, right up until the very end, leaving me to handle most of the details. I reassured myself that it was all okay. It was more fulfilling to keep engaged. It's wiser to concentrate on my tasks rather than dwell on the tightening knot in my chest whenever that house crosses my mind. It was significant that his father had been the one to propose it. With a deliberate eye, I selected my attire, all the while feigning indifference. Cozy, realistic. The assortment of items a woman gathers for a serene family retreat. Yet, hidden beneath the cozy cotton tops and casual jeans, there lay delicate pieces of lingerie that had remained untouched for months. Delicate ivory lace, delicate bands, silk so delicate, caressed the skin like a whisper of air. I convinced myself it was merely a routine, that it held no significance. I spun a tale that wasn't true. Once more, the journey was quite ordinary. My husband was determined to take control, eager to showcase his ability to disconnect, even if just for a short weekend adventure. His father sat beside him, ready to share tales of the road ahead. In solitude, I found myself in the back, a book resting on my lap, my gaze drifting over the words, yet failing to truly grasp their essence. We paused for a moment during our journey, a gas station accompanied by a quaint little market. My husband slipped inside to fetch drinks and snacks, leaving us in the car, the engine humming gently below. In an instant, a hush enveloped the space between us. Well known at this point, burdened by the unspoken words that lingered between us, I maintained my focus on the view outside, following the contours of the horizon where the fields kissed the sky, feigning indifference to the weight of his gaze upon me. "You've been silent," he remarked at last, his tone soft. "I'm weary," I replied, the words flowing out effortlessly. "You're not telling the truth," he said, his voice steady and calm, filled with unwavering conviction. I pivoted, locked eyes with him, and willed myself to maintain the connection. He held his gaze steady. "I'm striving to make the right choice," I murmured, softer than I intended. "So how's that journey unfolding for you?" I chose to remain silent. I was unable to do that. The atmosphere shifted as my husband walked in arms laden with bottled water and chips, completely unaware as usual. As we pressed on with our journey, an unspoken tension lingered in the air, hidden just below the surface, where neither of us dared to voice it. The lake house remained etched in my memory, just as I had envisioned it, in a setting where tall and narrow structures of dark wood rise against the lush green of the trees. The air remains fresh and cool even as summer casts its warm embrace. Within, the air was rich with the scent of cedar and dust, a delicate blend of nostalgia and history woven into each beam. In those cramped quarters, whispers traveled easily, the delicate barriers unable to hold back the echoes of life beyond. In this place, they were bound to cross paths with no room for pretense or separation. As the evening unfolded, we gathered on the porch, three souls sharing the warmth of companionship. With glasses of wine cradled in our hands, the gentle symphony of insects serenaded our dialogue, weaving a tapestry of moments between us. My husband shared tales of his work, once more recounting the emails that lingered in his inbox, the deadlines that awaited his attention come morning. He spoke with a captivating charm, as if he knew we were all hanging on his every word. Yet that wasn't the case for me nor for his father. His gaze frequently sought me out, gentle yet steadfast. Each time our gazes locked, the atmosphere thickened, and everything around us faded away, leaving only the connection that pulsed in the air. Fleeting glimpses, transient instances, yet each one contributes another burden to the balance, gradually leaning toward calamity. As the evening deepened, my husband took his leave, slipping inside to place one final call before we settled in for the night. His father and I stayed behind, a silence enveloping us, the warmth of the wine coursing down my throat, my fingers rhythmically tapping against the glass stem in a restless dance. He finally spoke, shattering the quiet, his gaze fixed elsewhere. "You're punishing yourself," he said. "I'm making an effort to be good," I responded, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the shadows beyond. "It seems you may have forgotten the essence of joy." The words carried a weight that felt almost unbearable. I sensed them nestle within me, pushing against the spot where my determination had started to falter. I stood, shaking off the dust from my legs, placing my glass down with a hurried motion, the gentle clink against the table resonating more than expected. "I'm heading to bed," I declared, striving to keep my voice calm. I chose not to linger for his response. The narrow hallway welcomed me, the wooden floor whispering secrets, with each creak beneath my steps, every sound echoing in the stillness of the house. As I peeled away the layers, each garment was treated with a gentle reverence, and I found myself enveloped in the delicate embrace of the ivory lace I had once tossed aside without a second thought. The mirror revealed my image: shoulders exposed, skin, delicate eyes that seemed overly wide, filled with understanding. I draped a sweater over my shoulders, attempting to shield myself from the weight of my guilt. Yet it did little to calm the frantic beating of my heart. As I nestled beneath the cool sheets, my husband's side of the bed still vacant, I shut my eyes and attempted to calm my breathing, striving to quiet the echo of his voice, the way his gaze had locked onto mine, unwavering and resolute. The night stretched on, elusive and restless. As my husband finally came back, he eased into bed next to me, the light from his phone casting a soft glow on his face. He brushed his lips against my cheek, a fleeting kiss that felt both cool and far away. His hand lingered on my hip, a gesture so known, so casual, already slipping into slumber before I could unravel my feelings about his caress. I remained wide awake long after his breaths transformed into the gentle cadence of slumber. And even in the shadows I sensed the magnetic presence of the man resting in the adjacent room. The morning unfolded, enveloped in a gentle mist that caressed the window panes, softening the view and lending an air of tranquility to the world beyond. As I stood at the kitchen counter, my hands cradled a warm mug of coffee. I gazed out, captivated by the fog gracefully drifting off the lake. The house stood in silence. The soft sound of my husband's voice floated down from the upstairs bedroom. Another call, another negotiation, another promise that the weekend was meant for us, yet his focus wandered far from the moment. There was no fault found in him, not quite. For years, I convinced myself that his dedication, his drive, and his unwavering quest for achievement were the qualities that defined him as a worthy companion, a trustworthy choice. He always remembered the special days. He always spoke softly. He arrived home right on schedule. He was a steadfast presence, unwavering and reliable. Yet there is a cost to ensuring safety. The sensation was palpable, sharper than it had ever been before. The way my body had adapted to emptiness, How my skin had come to overlook the sensation of hands that caressed with purpose, with longing. For an eternity, I convinced myself that it was sufficient, that love could endure solely through consistency. Yet the deception lingered, a bitter weight resting on my tongue. As soon as I sensed the familiar sound of his father's footsteps approaching from behind, I was certain it was him. I simply knew his presence enveloped the room in a unique way, subdued yet electric. "You've risen with the dawn," he remarked. I nodded. My back still turned to him, my gaze locked on the shimmering surface of the lake. Rest eluded me. I couldn't either. The gentle scrape of the chair against the floor signaled his arrival at the table behind me. His gaze was palpable, unwavering, as if it were a silent invitation for me to look his way, to encounter it. I did not. Last night lingered in my mind. He shared. I held the mug, close, my fingers curling around it, feeling the warmth seep into my skin, a gentle reminder of the stories waiting to be told. The pain anchored me in reality, me too. I confessed more gently than I had meant to. The room stood empty, devoid of any presence, a moment of pure solitude. No one to rescue me from the force that was becoming increasingly difficult to withstand. As I pivoted with care, our gazes intertwined. That was devoid of any remorse. Embrace it fully. It was just that familiar hushed assurance that had unraveled me before. He rose, bridging the distance between us with a calm assurance, unhurried and unwavering, his hand extended gently, grazing my wrist, following the rhythm of my pulse with his thumb. The caress was so soft, it seemed to carry a hint of malice. "We can acknowledge that this occurred," he said. I shook my head. The words lodged in my throat. "I'm being genuine." For what felt like an eternity, we remained still, caught in the silence of the moment. The air was thick with unspoken words, a fragile thread holding us together, ready to break at any moment. As I moved in a little nearer, "There isn't a lot to share. Just the right amount. Just enough to convey that I wasn't fleeing." His hand found its way to my waist, fingers gently pressing into my side, holding me in place. My breath hitched as he leaned in, slow and intentional, offering me every opportunity to retreat. I did not. The kiss unfolded in a way that was entirely different from the first. It was a moment of pure certainty. There are no inquiries. This time, there was no doubt purposeful. His lips met mine, carrying the unspoken burdens of our untold tales. All the words left unspoken. As my fingers grazed the nape of his neck, drawing him nearer, a sudden wave of emotion surged within me, bringing a prickling sensation of tears to the surface, not out of remorse. From a sense of comfort, from desire, from the chilling moment when I understood that this feeling of being truly alive had eluded me for years. The bitterness of coffee lingered on his lips, while the roughness of his hands brushed against the soft curve of my back. His fingers gripped my sweater tightly, as if he feared I might vanish into thin air. I did not. The echo of footsteps on the stairs shattered the stillness, like a thread stretched to its breaking point. We quickly distanced ourselves, retreating into our own corners, breaths labored, eyes alert, hearts racing. My husband wandered into the kitchen, shortly after his attention captured by his phone and scrolling, typing, completely engrossed in the digital world. "The coffee is brewing now." "Thanks, babe," he murmured, his gaze fixed elsewhere. A smile spread across my face. Or at least I shaped my lips into a semblance of a smile. "Absolutely," I responded, my tone unwavering, though my hands quivered just out of sight. As the hours passed, We found ourselves entwined in a delicate dance of shared meals and light-hearted exchanges, each of us performing our parts, unaware of the subtle changes lurking just beneath the surface of that familiar home. Yet a transformation had taken place as the afternoon sun began to dip. My husband proposed an adventure along the boundary of our land, a moment to truly disconnect, as he referred to it. He vanished up the stairs to collect his belongings, leaving us alone once more for a brief moment. His father lingered by the window, gazing at the trees, with his hands tucked into his pockets. He remained silent. There was no need for him to do that. The space between us lingered, with the echo of that kiss, its essence suspended in the air, like a wisp of smoke. I chose not to say, "I'm sorry." He didn't either. Instead, I strolled by him just within reach, allowing the hem of my sweater to lightly graze his arm. The warmth radiated from him, seeping through the delicate layer of cloth, his heartbeat echoing the rapid rhythm of my own pulse. I ventured outside into the refreshing afternoon breeze, the aroma of pine and soil anchoring me once more. Yet it did little to calm the tempest brewing within my chest. As my husband called from the porch, inquiring if I was prepared, I glanced back one last time, our gazes locking with his father's through the window. He nodded, a subtle, nearly undetectable gesture. In that moment, I realized the journey was far from finished. The journey was just on the horizon. The days that came after were more subdued than I had anticipated. In the stillness, there was an absence of pursuit. No longing looks exchanged, no frantic calls or urgent pleas spoken. If anything, he appeared more at ease, as if the kiss we had exchanged had seamlessly woven itself into the very essence of the atmosphere surrounding us. A hidden thread so securely tied that it couldn't be pulled free without unraveling everything around it. Yet the silence did not bring any relief. It only added to the trouble. I caught myself waiting for him when I really shouldn't have, straining to hear his voice, even in spaces where I was certain he wasn't present. Each innocent gathering, a shared breakfast, a stroll around the lake, the three of us sitting side by side on the porch in the evenings, seemed like a challenge to my own resilience, and I found myself struggling. My husband stayed unaware, lost in his tasks, in timelines, in embodying the dependable man he had always been. Our connection was smooth, free from any harsh exchanges, disputes, or signs of strain. Yet a gap remained, the sort of chasm that no words could span, as he remained blissfully unaware of the divide that lay before him. I began to observe the tiniest details, like how infrequently he reached out to me unless it was necessary, how his hand resting on my back seemed more like a routine action than a genuine desire, how even when we were cozied up on the couch, his knee never made contact with mine, and how our conversations revolved around practical matters. What time dinner was, which bill required attention, yet rarely ventured into the realm of our emotions. The straightforwardness of his father's focus, in comparison, seemed perilous in its transparency. In his gaze there were no distractions, no facades, only the profound awareness of my existence that hung between us, who witnessed once more the same event unfolded the next week. A new text message arrives, brief, yet packed with significance. "How about we grab a coffee together?" I found myself lost in thought, my gaze fixed on the screen, my thumb poised above the keyboard, waiting for the right moment to begin. I really ought to have declined, I was aware of that. Yet the reality was I didn't give it a second thought. Not quite. In a quaint little cafe nestled in the heart of downtown, we found ourselves surrounded by the warm embrace of steam rising from the espresso machines. The tables were cozily packed together and the air was infused with the delightful scents of cinnamon and freshly roasted coffee beans. In the late morning, a serene pause hung in the air, a gentle interlude between the bustling morning rush and the impending lunch crowd. He sat there, a solitary figure with a cup of black coffee before him, waiting silently for the unfolding of the moment. I ordered tea and took a seat opposite him. As we sat across from each other, the space between us felt charged, my knees nearly brushing against his. I instinctively tucked my legs back under the chair, trying to resist the pull of his closeness. In the beginning, silence enveloped us. The silence that enveloped us now held a peculiar sense of solace. It was clear to both of us that we weren't here merely to discuss the weather. At last, he found his voice. He assured her, "I won't pressure you into anything you're not comfortable with." As I gazed at my hands, my fingers danced along the edge of the delicate porcelain cup. "That's not the issue," I replied. "It's just that I have my reasons." His gaze softened, yet a smile remained elusive. He simply nodded, allowing the words to linger in the air around us. He spoke softly. "I don't want to add any more weight to your already heavy load. Yet I can't pretend that you don't cross my mind." I raised my gaze and locked eyes with him completely. They maintained their usual unwavering intensity. Yet an additional layer lingered beneath the surface, something gentler, more relatable. Perhaps a sense of longing or limitation. Text. "I often find myself reflecting on you as well," I replied. From that moment on, time seemed to stretch, allowing for a leisurely unfolding of events, just quiet. Moments, no grand gestures or schemes. In this moment, we find ourselves reflecting on the environment surrounding us, recognizing the decisions left unmade, yet feeling an undeniable pull that keeps us tethered here. As we stepped out of the cafe, he guided me to my car, maintaining a careful distance that felt innocent. Yet the tension between us was palpable, like a taut string ready to snap. Just as I was about to settle into the driver's seat, he extended his hand, his fingers lightly grazing my arm. "Companions," he murmured, his tone soft. I chose to remain silent. I was unable to do that. Because we both understood that the term was out of place, I navigated the road with ease, my grip firm on the steering wheel, yet my thoughts danced wildly in a myriad of directions. The tales we shared, the tales left untold, the way his lips formed my name, a moment etched in memory. The quiet strength in his gaze, the burden of all that remains untold. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I prepared dinner, just as I always did. My husband lingered at the table, his eyes glued to his phone as he nibbled on his meal, sharing tales of a looming business trip that he might not escape. I listened intently, posed thoughtful inquiries, and provided the perfect replies. I embraced my role with enthusiasm. Yet within me there was a smouldering ember of something I couldn't extinguish, no remorse. Longing, it's more than just for him. While that was a piece of the puzzle, yet it was about what he embodied. To embrace the sensation of a renewed awareness of being desired. As the night deepened, my husband sought my warmth beneath the covers. His touch was mechanical. Known, his kisses were gentle, yet far away. I allowed him to proceed. I allowed the moment to unfold, just as it always had. My body flowed as it was meant to, yet my thoughts were elsewhere. Once upon a time, it found itself nestled in a cozy cafe, legs intertwined under a quaint little table, lips tingling from a kiss that lingered in the air. And somewhere within a realization dawned upon me. Labeling it as friendship wouldn't rescue us. It had transformed into a whole new experience. The week that followed seemed to linger far beyond what was reasonable. Time flowed like a hidden current unnoticed, as if one was suspended in a moment, caught in the depths of an unspoken tale, anticipating the unfolding of events, uncertain if you desire it to happen or not. Each day unfolded with the comforting embrace of well-worn patterns. In the early hours, a warm cup of coffee awaits, ready to awaken the senses and stir the imagination. Messages, tasks to complete, gather around the table. At 7, the gentle light of the television casts a warm ambience, bridging the quiet moments shared between my husband and me. As the evening unfolds, and each day under the burden of that everyday life, the pain pushed more insistently against my ribs. I reassured myself that everything was manageable, that distance would cause it to diminish. With ample time and a bit of diversion, I believed I could reshape the frayed threads of our connection into something tidy and palatable. I immersed myself in various little endeavors, engaged in social commitments, engaged in activities that would occupy my hands and distract my mind from the recollection of his lips against my own, the warmth of his hand resting on my waist, the calm, measured way he had pronounced my name. Yet desire often disregards logic. Nearly a fortnight passed before our paths crossed once more. Once again, the table is set for an evening filled with laughter and shared moments. Another meticulously crafted evening where the facade of everything remained polished, while the undercurrent surged with greater intensity than ever. My husband, as always, was brimming with ideas, gatherings, conversations that unfold, speaking with a serene confidence that flowed naturally from him. His father, as was his custom, lent an attentive ear, provided insights as anticipated, grinned at just the right moments, and I sat there smiling as well, sensing that my skin no longer felt like it belonged. It was only after the last bite of dessert had vanished, the plates whisked away, and the gentle sound of my husband's voice drifted from the living room, where he was engrossed in yet another business call, that the distance between us began to re-emerge. In the kitchen, I found myself wiping down the counter for the second time, battling the tremors in my hands. There was a gentle whisper behind me. He paused for a moment, his voice measured and calm, as if weighing each word before letting it slip into the air. I chose to keep my back turned. As I held the dish towel, my fingers curled around it with a sense of anticipation. Next weekend, we're heading up to the house in the mountains, he shared. In that place, silence reigned supreme. Serene, perhaps you ought to join us. The words fell gently, yet they still managed to leave a mark. Is it really just me? I inquired, my voice softer than I had meant it to be. He took his time before responding. I sensed his gaze upon me, measuring the significance of each utterance. Your husband's days are filled to the brim. He will appreciate having someone there for his father. It was a statement. It was more of a command than anything else. It was a proposition cloaked in an air of nonchalance, appearing entirely sensible. Yet the reality lingered just below the surface, clear and piercing. I finally turned, met his gaze, and recognized the same serene assurance that had captivated me from the very beginning. His gaze held a calmness devoid of any sense of urgency. There is no sense of urgency, simply desire. Clear and straightforward, understood. I really ought to have declined. I assured myself of that truth even as I gave my agreement. I pondered for a moment before responding. Yet, I was already aware of the answer. The moments before the journey seemed to stretch endlessly. As I packed, I found myself immersed in the familiar rhythm, recalling the meticulous care I had taken during my previous journey. Attire that embraces ease, steering clear of anything too revealing, at least on the surface. Yet hidden under the cozy layers of sweaters and jeans, I carefully tucked away lace and silk into the corners of my suitcase, my fingers quivering more than I was willing to acknowledge. I played out the dialogue in my mind countless times. This is how I would share it with my husband. I would present it as something innocuous, useful, and a kind gesture. And it unfolded beautifully. He accepted it without a second thought, hardly a flutter of the eyelids. A journey once again out of reach, a new opportunity to embrace the comfort of home while keeping the mind engaged. The journey to the mountains unfolded in serene silence. It was just the two of us nestled in the confines of his car, where moments unfolded and memories began to take shape. The gentle purr of the engine below us. The trees along the highway transformed into elongated, shadowy lines as they raced past the window. He allowed me the space to share when I was ready, embraced the quiet. Allowing the moments to speak for themselves, he allowed the silence to linger between us, as calm as his breath, as certain as the way his hands lay on the steering wheel. As we arrived at the cabin, a refreshing chill in the air greeted us, surprising me with its unexpectedness. The crisp mountain air rushed into my lungs as I emerged from the car, invigorating and alive. The setting exuded a captivating charm through its unadorned elegance. In the contrast of dark wood and the pale sky, a tale unfolds. The aroma of pine lingered heavily in the atmosphere. The gentle murmur of a stream weaves its way through the trees, whispering tales of nature's quiet beauty. Alone. Tranquil, we are distant from everything else, fully aware that this was the choice we made. The atmosphere within was invitingly cozy, the gentle pop and hiss of flames dancing in the cozy hearth. The glow was soft and warm, casting a gentle hue over everything. In this cozy cabin, 2 bedrooms await, each nestled at opposite ends with a charming living space and kitchen, bridging the gap between them, just the right amount of space to weave a narrative. Just on the brink of a not succeeding, we moved through the space with a silent grace. Each action a subtle dance, as unspoken words lingered in every exchanged glance. The evening meal was unpretentious. Once upon a time, there was a delightful dish known as grilled fish. Once upon a time, a medley of vibrant vegetables found themselves in a warm oven, where they transformed into a delightful dish, each one sharing its unique flavor and charm. Their journey from garden to table was filled with warmth and a touch of magic, creating a feast that brought everyone together. A bottle of wine uncorked, inviting us to share our tales. The dialogue remained cheerful and engaging, respectful, exploring familiar themes yet hidden within each phrase. A quiet intensity lingered, the way his gaze held on my hands while I poured the wine spoke volumes, a silent narrative unfolding between us. It was in the gentle touch of his fingers as he slid the salt toward me across the table. In the measured, thoughtful manner, he observed me when he believed I was unaware. Once the meal was finished, we gathered around the warmth of the fire, the gentle embrace of it caressing my skin, the silhouettes waltzing across the surfaces that surround us. The quiet lingered, a shared moment that felt rich and full as we both savored the stillness without haste. At last he found his voice. He spoke gently, reminding me of the promise I made to myself not to inquire. However, I also have no desire to put on a facade. I locked eyes with him, unwavering. At last, no longer fleeing, I replied, "Neither do I." The words lingered in the space between us, stripped down and sincere. Yet we remained still, not at this moment. In the stillness, the fire let out a sudden crisp crackle. And I grasped the essence. There are boundaries that once crossed should remain unaltered. They simply require someone to listen to their tales. The night in the cabin unfolded slowly, each passing hour, weighing down on my chest more than the one before. That evening our hands remained apart, untouched by the warmth of connection. We remained on opposite sides of the room, the space between us untouched. Yet, in a way, the lack of connection weighed more than any hug ever could. In the way he observed me unwavering and calm, as I lingered by the fire feigning interest in the flickering flames, a tale began to unfold. In that moment, I felt the subtle pull of the distance separating us, stirring emotions in parts of me I had long learned to overlook. As I stepped into my room, I gently closed the door, taking a moment to lean against the cool wood before securing the lock. My hands trembled as I unfastened my jeans, shedding the cozy sweater, revealing myself in nothing but delicate lace and smooth silk. Gazing at the stranger reflected in the mirror across the room, my skin glowed, lips a vivid hue, eyes sparkling with the weight of unfulfilled desires and untold dreams. In my reflection, I caught a glimpse of something unfiltered, a truth I had battled to keep hidden, and it took me by surprise to witness it so vividly. On my face, I slipped the baggy t-shirt over my head, allowing it to drape effortlessly against my frame. Yet even that couldn't mask the sensation of my heartbeat echoing beneath the delicate material. The night stretched on, elusive and restless. In the hushed atmosphere of the cabin, each creak of the floorboards and every whisper of the wind outside resonated with a heightened intensity. I shifted from one side to the other, the sheets tangled around my legs, my body yearning for something, while my mind spiraled through a cycle of thoughts I desperately wished to avoid. I found myself pondering whether he was also lying awake, just beyond the fragile barrier of wood that separated us. If his hands were balled into fists, like mine, clutching the sheets with a fierce grip, attempting to banish the longing. Or if he remained by the fire, savoring the last of the wine, gazing into the flames, lost in thoughts of the same impossible dreams as dawn broke. I found myself already alert. As I got up softly, I slipped into a cozy cotton sweater and jeans, hastily tying my hair back before making my way to the kitchen. There, the familiar aroma of coffee welcomed me, wrapping around me like a cherished routine. He stood at the window, a mug cradled in his hand, his gaze lost somewhere beyond the glass where the trees danced gently in the breeze. The atmosphere surrounding us had shifted, a stillness, enveloping the space, yet it carried a weight that was palpable. We shared breakfast as if we were characters in a tale, bound by secrets yet to be revealed, laid back yet courteous. He graciously extended the final piece of toast to me. I chose not to participate. He filled my cup with another round of coffee. I expressed my gratitude. Each word lingered perfectly in the space between us, as if we both feared that silence would reveal the unspoken truths we held inside. Afterward, we wandered through the woods, surrounding the cabin, moving in a dance of proximity, taking long walks that kept us close, yet distinct, each step a silent narrative unfolding between us. In the distance, a peculiar sense of solace lingered, yet it was tinged with a harshness that could not be ignored. It felt as though we were inflicting our own suffering, intensifying the desire by holding it in. More than once I noticed him watching me, his gaze lingering on the small of my back as I bent down to retrieve a smooth stone from the stream's edge. As I swept my hair away from my shoulders under the warm afternoon sun, the curve of my neck became a canvas for every gaze, each one lingering like a gentle caress. As the evening settled in at the cabin, The sun dipped below the trees, casting a warm golden hue across the landscape. I stood on the porch, arms crossed against the cool air, gazing at the horizon as it slowly faded into twilight. In that moment, my mind wandered to my husband, reflecting on the life we had woven together with such care. There was a comfort in its familiarity, a rhythm in the predictability of our days. He always returned home as expected, never overlooking the little details that mattered. Each night, he would lean in to kiss me before bed, a gentle gesture that felt as natural as the ticking of a clock. And I reflected on how little of my essence that existence truly embraced. There exists a certain solitude that isn't derived from isolation, a deep sense of isolation that develops between two individuals who cease to connect long before they cease to share their intimate space. I had convinced myself for ages that it was sufficient. Those elements of stability, respect, and partnership were the essence of what truly mattered. Yet, as I stood on that porch, my body alive with the echo of an unforgettable kiss, I sensed the emptiness of that reasoning. The sound of his footsteps reached my ears before his figure came into view. Leisurely, without rush, he paused next to me, just within reach, the warmth radiating from him, bridging the gap between us, yet we remained unconnected. He spoke gently. "You seem to be carrying a weight of unhappiness." It was a statement. It wasn't intended to be harsh. I remained quiet, my gaze locked on the trees, observing as the shadows stretched and danced upon the earth. "I've been observing you for quite a while," he went on, his voice dropping, but remaining firm. "Every action you take is spot on. You are the heartbeat of the home. Heartbeat. You maintain harmony. Your skill shines through effortlessly." I took a deep breath, feeling the pressure in my throat. "But when did someone last inquire about your desires?" he inquired. The question settled heavily within me, a weight I couldn't ignore. The truth wrapped around me, finding a home deep within my ribs, a presence I could no longer overlook. As I shifted my gaze, our eyes finally connected, a moment suspended in time. His gaze locked onto mine, unwavering and bold. "I'm not sure," I replied, my voice barely rising above a whisper. In that fleeting instant, we remained perfectly still. The distance between us crackled with tension, a fragile boundary we had sketched and erased countless times until it finally shattered. He extended his hand, then gradually his fingers gliding gently over my wrist. His touch so delicate, it might have seemed unintentional, if not for the intensity of his gaze fixed on mine. "I see you," he said simply, and in that moment, after what felt like an eternity, I truly felt acknowledged. Not in the role of a wife, not as a partner to anyone, but as my true self. The stillness that ensued was rich with meaning. It was brimming with unspoken truths, with the admissions we dared not make. Yet it existed there all the same, pulsating beneath the surface of each look, each utterance. As I finally pivoted back toward the door and stepped into the cabin, my heart raced with such intensity that I feared it might burst from my chest. As I moved forward, I felt his presence, lingering behind me, patiently biding his time. After certain decisions, a silence envelops the air, a stillness that lacks the comfort of peace, resembling more the calm within a tempest. Moment of stillness, heavy with the anticipation of the consequences that await, ready to envelop you in their embrace. As I lay awake that night, my gaze fixed on the wooden beams above in the soft glow of the cabin room, I absorbed the gentle whispers of the night outside. Though my body felt weary, my mind was a restless storyteller, weaving tales that kept me awake. Each thought spiraled around, revisiting the same questions. the same desires, the same longing that had brought me to this moment. I reflected on my husband, the man who shared my bed and lived beside me, who never once considered that my thoughts could wander elsewhere while he was close to me. I reflected on the countless moments we had woven together, the familiar, comforting cadence of life that had once enveloped us in security. And I reflected on the distance I felt from that sense of security now, how deeply I had grown to resent the very thing I once clung to with such fervor. It was something else entirely, a feeling that lingered without malice. It was a void where recognition, connection, and desire should flourish, not merely in the role of a wife, nor solely as a partner who maintained a tidy home, organized the calendar, and folded the laundry, but as a woman, as a being of flesh, blood, and breath. As I opened my eyes, the soft grey light of morning greeted me, accompanied by the gentle aroma of coffee wafting from the kitchen. I could hear him moving about, his movements as graceful and deliberate as ever, weaving through the quiet of the space. I lingered in bed more than I typically would, allowing the minutes to drift by, observing the dance of shadows on the walls. There was a weight that settled deep within me. As I finally got up and put on my clothes, I discovered him outside, carefully arranging firewood in tidy piles next to the house. His back faced me, the muscles in his arms rippling beneath the frayed fabric of his shirt as he shifted, calm and unwavering. Calm and comfort guided. As he turned and caught sight of me, a subtle nod escaped him, a gentle recognition in the air. Not a single smile crossed our faces as we moved the final pieces of wood to the pile. I stood by his side, the quiet enveloping us heavy with unspoken thoughts and shared moments. Occasionally our hands would graze against each other, those fleeting, unintentional contacts, igniting a warmth amidst the chill of the morning breeze. We remained close, not wanting to break the connection. As we found ourselves back on the porch, gazing at the trees shrouded in lingering fog, he began to share his thoughts. His voice carried a gentler tone than before, tinged with a hint of melancholy. "You don't have to keep hiding in the shadows," he said. The words caressed softly, yet they cut through me with precision. I chose to remain silent. I was unable to do that. My throat felt constricted, as if a tale was trapped within, yearning to be released. I pondered the implications of acknowledging my unhappiness. I hadn't been for a time that felt longer than I wished to admit, not even to my own thoughts. I pondered the significance of expressing the truth vocally. It goes beyond him for my part. Time seemed to stretch on endlessly in the following hours. As we gathered our belongings, we moved through the well-worn routine of shutting the cabin for the season. The dishes were scrubbed clean, the sheets removed from the bed, and the windows secured tightly. All is in its rightful place. All is tidy and in order. The journey home was just as silent as the journey to get there. Yet, it was a different kind of stillness. This one carried more weight. The burden of the events we allowed to unfold, of the moments we had nurtured to flourish between us, even when we promised ourselves we wouldn't. As we arrived in the city, he pulled the car to a stop right in front of my house. The car belonging to my husband was already parked in the driveway, exactly as I had anticipated. Unsurprising, trustworthy, protected. As I extended my hand towards the handle, anticipation surged within me, signaling the moment to step into the unknown. Prepared to step back into the existence I had been donning as a protective shield for ages, just as I was about to leave, he uttered a final word. He said, "I'm not asking you to destroy everything you've built. I'm simply urging you to be honest with yourself about the reality of the situation." I hesitated, my grip firm on the door handle. I kept my gaze forward, refusing to glance his way. "I appreciate the journey you shared with me." I persevered, my voice trembling slightly. As I entered the house, my husband welcomed me with his familiar, albeit preoccupied warmth. Once there was a gentle kiss on the cheek, a light-hearted remark about what to have for dinner, and a fleeting reference to an email that awaited a response. A smile spread across my face. I gave a slight nod. I expressed everything perfectly, yet within me I found myself in a different realm altogether. That night, as I lay beside him in bed, feeling the comforting weight of his arm resting on my waist, I found myself gazing at the ceiling once more. Just like I had in the cabin, this time I understood that there was no turning back from what had transpired. There was no dramatic act of treachery to recount whispers of secrets shared softly. No tales of sorrow or fury. Yet a change had occurred. A part of me had shattered, revealing what lay within. I held back my tears. I remained calm. Surprisingly, I found no sense of guilt. Contrary to what I had anticipated, I felt alive. In that moment, I experienced a vibrant pulse of existence, and I came to realize at last that there are decisions we take without even realizing it. Paths we navigate not in an instant but gradually, with each step, each breath, each fleeting look. There comes a moment when we pause, reflecting on the journey we've taken and the individual we've transformed into. Reflecting on the times we thought we were destined for anything but greatness. Uncertainty loomed over the next chapter, leaving me in suspense. Yet I was aware of this. Rest eluded me and the night stretched on endlessly. Never again after this